when Brian.
Whether you like it or don't like it, learn to love it because it is the best thing going.
And welcome back to the Boundary Corner podcast, a part of the College Huddle Network, along with my partners, Brian Siegler, Jonathan Talley, tonight with our special guest, managing editor of Tech Sideline, David Cunningham. I am Curtis Wilson, and we are brought to you by Moments on the Maury. Looking for a weekend getaway this spring or summer? Check out Moments on the Maury. Might be exactly what you're looking for. Owned by a proud Hokie, located just outside Lexington, Virginia. Place gives you fishing, kayaking, or just relaxing by the river with a nice cold brewski right out the back door. Check out the links in the comments or visit them on their Instagram page, Moments on the Maury. David Cunningham, long time no talk, man. How you been?
Doing well, guys. Great to see all you guys. It's funny. I travel all over the place during basketball season, and it's nice to be back at my desk in my house, honestly getting ready to chop up some spring football. It's been a while since we chatted, and basketball season's taking a little bit of a toll on me, but I'm ready for football, man.
Can I ask a question? How many miles have you logged this year, January? Because you went to just about every away game, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny. The winter storm kind of threw everything out of whack a little bit because I was supposed to go to Louisville again and didn't go.
Okay.
I know in the first 2 weeks in the final week of February and like the first 2 weeks of March, I think I drove around 2,000 miles. And that's not, I mean, and that doesn't even factor in flying to Austin for the NCAA tournament. So I'm a busy man, going a lot of places. What helped this year was I did not travel over Thanksgiving because both teams were out of the country. Usually, past couple of years, I've gone down to Florida, so that was actually kind of nice. I got to spend Thanksgiving with family for the first time in a couple of years. But yeah, basketball season's done and in the books, and we got spring football on the horizon, man. And James Franklin's got those boys working.
There's definitely some juice. We're starting to see some things start to trickle back onto the X-Time line a little bit. It was a little quiet in January and February there, at least relative to kind of what we've seen the last few years. But it's nice to get things cranking up again. It looks like getting some every time a practice is out, we're getting some cut ups there, getting to see a little bit of action. So that's been nice.
Yeah, when I think. The really cool thing was, and I did not get to see it because I was traveling, but the really cool thing is last Thursday, Tech's, I think, second full practice, James Franklin opened the entire thing to the media. So the media got to watch a whole practice.
A whole, like beginning to end?
Yes, like beginning to end. Like, we're talking like 2.5 hour practice. So, I mean, that's something that we haven't had happen in a really long time, probably going back to Beamer. So
yeah,
that was
Bitter called it a unicorn. I think when he was.
Yes. I don't know that I would expect it. I wouldn't know that I would expect it often, but and I wish I was there. Of course, I was in Texas, but I think it it's been interesting, getting to know Coach Franklin, obviously, and building up that media relationship with him. And the Virginia Tech media contingent is a bit different from Penn State, and kind of starting from ground zero in that regard. But yeah, I mean, him opening up an entire practice, like I know talking to Chris and Andy, they really appreciated just getting a chance to watch guys work and get a real sense more than just like 5 to 10 minutes at practice once a week. So yeah, pretty cool. And of course we'll have the spring game coming up.
That's going to be exciting. I know, like you were just alluding to there, usually like that media availability is more like 1 or 2 practice sessions, not necessarily a full length practice. So that's pretty exciting stuff.
So let me ask you something, David. First of all, Brian, if you would have put some glasses on the avatar when it first started, that could have been David. Like, I mean, look, it was Shelton, but it could have been David. So you needed to change that up a little bit.
20.
Just a quick question, because you are in the media. From a scale of, we're cool, to a scale I want to slash somebody's tires, how mad does media members get about the no access? Not saying you or your kind of coworkers that you work with, but just overall, like, is it a thorn in the side of like media guys that can't get access to programs? And not just saying like Virginia Tech in general, but just overall, because that's what your job is, right? To, cover a sport. But when you have a lot of coaches that are more closed off, how does that feel in your from what you've seen?
Yeah, it honestly is it can be very frustrating, because the difficult part is it's not like I think a lot of my colleagues in my position, you just want to kind of tell what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a job to do to the fans. Hey, man, like, you're investing money into this program. You're paying for season tickets. Here's what's going on in your football program on a day-to-day basis. That's my job to say,
Right.
Hey, here's what's going on. And when coaches, I saw a lot of them, now in this era, it's not like Frank Beamer, who ran his own website and posted stuff about what was going on all the time, every day. Coaches have become more secure and more closed off about a lot of that stuff. And the most frustrating part becomes when there's not a lot going on, like this past season, when the team is interim head coach and is just losing game after game after game, and you're not, they cut off practice access and kind of just shut things down. It just becomes very dull and repetitive, where you're not getting anything. And it's really difficult, because it's like, we have no idea what's going on outside of games. I think a lot of my colleagues, even across the country and even across the ACC, you're just looking to kind of say, hey, here's what's going on. You're not necessarily looking to take shots or find the good or the bad. You're just kind of like, hey, here's this guy, he's playing well. This guy's a guy to watch at practice. And I think the Penn State media, James Franklin was there for a dozen years. And I think that relationship wears after a little bit. And I think it got a little frustrating for him, because the Penn State media contingent is large. The Virginia Tech media contingent is not that big. Normal practice, there's 5 to 10 people for us. At Penn State practice, there's probably like 20 to 30 people. So it's much different. And I think the opportunity for him to kind of start fresh and say, hey, the press conference we had last week, he handed us a sheet of player availability. Hey, here are all the guys that are out for spring practice, and asked us if it's helpful. It's like, yeah, that's very helpful, because we don't have to spend our time asking silly questions about injuries. But at the same time, we kind of want to know what's going on with guys, right?
What David is saying is he doesn't have to be over there on the sideline. Is that 60?
Yeah.
Who's got the blue on today?
Who's on the blue on? Oh, my God. Yeah, I get how helpful that can be, because if you know a guy is out, and again, in press conference, there were a couple guys missing that he, at Forthright, came to y'all and said, oh, no, they're not practicing or they're out for a while, they may come back. Well, that helps with the story, right? Because y'all are looking to say, like, we know Logan Howland's out. He's recovering immediately. Okay, Johnny Garrett started last year. Aiden Lynch played some games. Are any of these other transfers going to step up? Now you get to walk in and say, who's over at left? Who's at right? Whether it's the full session or the half session, or which of the ones are going against the bags together. Oh, now I know who that is. And that gives us information as fans out here. And that's what you're there to do. I always liked what you just said. And what you're saying is you're just trying to report it because you have a vested fan base. People want to know what's going on. You made an even better point. There are some people that are stroking checks. Some of those people have big enough checks where they'll know what's going on. Others who aren't stroking big enough checks want to know what's going on. Like, I gave $2,000 last year. No, it's not a lot, but it's what I can afford. Can I get something? And if they aren't letting y'all in there, or Damon from Roanoke Times, or other people, then nobody knows. And occasionally, fans can check out. They can just check out and say, you know what? I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to watch the presser. You know what? Maybe I'll turn the game on Saturday. So,
well, this is my thing. If you're not a good enough fan that you can't call D. Kuna and say, hey, man, what's going on? Like, that's your fault. I mean, I'm never checked out because I have access to my guy right here. If I want to know something that y'all don't need to know, I just call David behind the scenes, man. So,
my God,
if you are not a good enough fan where you're not friends with David, shame on you.
Oh my God,
I appreciate it. And Tally's not wrong either. I mean, and that is the thing. Like, there are times where like Curtis or Brian will message me. It's like, hey, like, especially Curtis. Curtis will be like, well, yo, what's going on with this guy? And I'm like, I'm honest. I'm like, hey, here's what I'm hearing. Like,
he'll tell me, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's you got season ticket holders, man. Like, they deserve to know what's going on in the program. And I think some coaches look at the media as an adversary. I think James Franklin's been doing this long enough that he understands the relationship and understands that he can build from ground zero and go, hey, we can set the kind of the foundation of what we want this to look like, what we want the relationship to look like at Virginia Tech. Now I'm doing this here for the first time, and things I liked that we did at Penn State, things I didn't like. Hey, here's how we're laying it out. If we give the media a full practice to just get a sense of watching guys run around and how they stack up against each other and really see them on the field, that's helpful. And as long as everybody's on the same page, I think it's beneficial for everyone. So it's been really cool to build a relationship with him so far, and heading in the right direction. And really, I'm excited to now that basketball season's done, kind of focus fully on football for the rest of the spring. And I know that spring game, he wants that stadium full. I'm interested to see what that crowd is going to be like.
Yeah, for real.
It'll be interesting. I remember the Fuente year, me and Brian went, and that was like 46. That was jam packed. But we're only a few years off of a Sugar Bowl at that point in time. Now we're a few years off of But we're gonna get back to football in a little while. Basketball season's over. As David said, he logged like 8,000 miles between airplane travel, car travel, and all that stuff. But we want to talk about both teams. And we're going to start with the better of those two teams. How about that? I'll be nice in that phrase. And let's talk with the Lady Hokies, because I think for a lot of us, you pay attention to it. A few years ago, when they were a top 10 team, I mean, all eyes were on them. Yep. I don't think the eyes were on them as much this year because it was Megan Duffy's second season. And it was just kind of like, they did okay last year. But then they had that huge win streak in the middle of the season, beat some good teams. It's like, well, wait a second. They got a chance to make the tournament. And then they kept winning, picked off some more wins near the end of the season. And then the next thing you know is they're in. To me, just from my knowledge of it, I feel like a year ahead of schedule. So, David, before we get into your trip and everything, do you think they were a year ahead of schedule when it comes to making the tournament?
A little bit. I would say they probably overachieved a little bit. I think they did more with less as far as this roster goes. I think I if Megan Duffy kind of squeezed everything out of this team,
Yeah.
and I look at this team on paper and go, man, there are a lot of holes, and and by that I mean that some of the depth I had questions about. They relied on a lot of role players that had not played big moments before, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But you're talking about a program that, and what is hard for people to forget is, before Virginia Tech made the NCAA tournament in 2021, the Hokies went 15 seasons without making the NCAA tournament and were 59 and 159 in the ACC. We're talking 125% of its games. You're finishing bottom of the league every year. And Kenny Brooks came in and stabilized it, obviously took them to the ACC championship game and won titles, took them to the Final Four. But when the two greatest players in program history walk out the door and you have to rebuild, and you're in this era with the portal and NIL, it's difficult.
Yeah.
And I think Megan Duffy has done a great job of stabilizing. They went 12-6 in the league and tied Notre Dame for 5th. Like, that is a great accomplishment. They maybe could have been a little bit of a higher seed in the NCAA tournament, but just getting back there, I think, is a great accomplishment in itself. And I wrote about this the other day on techsideline.com. It shows that the program is moving in the right direction. And I think they overachieved a little bit compared to how good their roster actually is. And it shows that they really maximized. They obviously have two really good players in Carly Wenzel and Karis Baker, but they maximized everyone else around them. And I think they were really fun to watch. They lost 2 games in January back-to-back to Miami and Louisville. And it kind of felt a little bit like, oh man, like how is this going to go? Like, they've got an interesting stretch coming up where they could string together some games, but they really need to show it. They haven't really found consistency yet. And to their credit, they stepped up. They won 7 games in a row. And they really went from being towards the bottom of the league in terms of the actual standings to up towards the top. And yeah, they dropped a couple games here or there against Notre Dame, NC State, North Carolina, but they ended the season on a high, secured their spot in the NCAA tournament. They were way off the bubble and step in the right direction. And the biggest thing for me is you got to keep building on it. Like I think recruiting to an NCAA tournament, like, hey man, we just went to the NCAA tournament. We're going to have most of our pieces back. You want to come be a part of this? I think that's a great recruiting pitch, and credit to the staff and the players and everyone involved, because they did a really good job of, I think, surprising a lot of people in terms of expectations. And I think a lot of people looked at this team on paper and said, yeah, they'll probably be a WBIT or WNIT team. Maybe if they're on the bubble, that'd be good. And they were way off the bubble. They did better than that, and a job well done by them. And I think this program has a bright future under Megan Duffy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And when we look at what they were able to do, it's really kind of impressive. To Curtis's point, I definitely feel like they were ahead of schedule. I probably had them like flirting with the bubble this year, maybe not quite getting in, kind of right there on the bubble, but they were able to really string some good games there in that one stretch you talked about with that 7-game turnaround, finished off the season strong. Let's talk about your trip out to Austin. I know you kind of alluded to the seating may wasn't as favorable to the Hokies as we would have wanted. What was that trip out there like? How did that matchup kind of work against them a little bit in that game?
Well, I think the difficult part is, anytime in the women's game, anytime you end up in an 8-9 game, it's going to be very difficult because in the women's game, top 4 seeds in every region host. So unlike the men where you go to neutral sites, like Florida played in Tampa, Duke played in Greenville, in the women's game, Virginia Tech's going to Texas.
Yeah.
That arena is gorgeous. I'd never been to Austin. Really cool city. A lot of really good food. Had a great trip. Would highly recommend. They got matched up with Oregon. Only ever played them once, and I think that's the unique part of the NCAA tournament. You're seeing teams that you've never played before. I thought the difference was Oregon's role players, honestly, were a little bit more consistent than Tech's. And Hokies got in foul trouble earlier in the game with Carly Wenzel, Karis Baker. They fell behind. And when your top two players are on the bench in foul trouble, it's how do you handle it? And to Tech's credit, it pulled out of the hole. It allowed a 12-0 run, bounced back with a 12-2 run, was within 4 at halftime. And then in that third quarter, Kyla Freeline got in foul trouble, and Tech really struggled a little bit in the interior, and Oregon dominated in the paint. They have a couple pretty good post players that they kind of fed through, and Tech struggled offensively. I thought the Oregon defense, they took away a lot of what the Hokies wanted to do, and just wasn't a really good shooting game from Tech until the fourth quarter when Karis Baker went off for 17 points, and a little bit too late. But it's difficult. This is a team that at times this year you've seen it. North Carolina, NC State, Notre Dame. They've had lulls for maybe not an entire quarter, but a couple minutes at a time. Where they've either struggled really, really poorly on the offense or defensive side of the ball, where they can't get a bucket or they can't get a stop. And that's what happens when there's a little bit of inconsistency. It just pops up for 5 minutes maybe. And that's what I felt like you saw it in the first half. And then to Tech's credit, it battled back. And then you saw it again in the second half, and it was just a little too much to overcome. But like I said before, making the NCAA tournament in itself, I think, is a huge accomplishment for this staff, and much better feeling for them last year than last year, when they were the first team out of the tournament. A lot of disappointment going around, and they were the fact that they were securely in, that they didn't have to flirt with the bubble, that they were a solid 9 seed. Now the question is, okay, next year, can you be 5, 6, 7? Can you? It's not easy, but can you move up a couple seed lines and potentially be in that realm where you avoid a dominant number 1 seed? And can you win a game in the tournament now? I think they have positioned themselves well to do that in the future. It's just difficult. I think Oregon is a pretty good team, and honestly just got better of that matchup, if that makes sense.
They came out the gate. I mean, that first quarter was was it 20 or 18? It was a big.
Yeah, I mean, they had a 12-0 run, and it's like you get put on your heels like that, and just makes it you can't allow big runs like that. And there have been a couple different times this year that Tech has allowed it, something like that, and it just makes it really, really difficult to recover.
Yep.
Let me ask this, because it is, we got to look forward now to it, because you just kind of mentioned it, saying, can they steal one next year, et cetera, et cetera. There are only 2 players effectively graduating. Now, I'm not going to talk portal, because it's tough to keep up with men's basketball portal. I can't imagine the women's basketball portal being even crazier. But you got Mel Daly, who's just a backup guard, a nice piece. Can they replace, if I'm butchering the name, Kyla Freeline?
Yeah, Kyla
Freeline, because basically a double-double, right at 10 points, close to 10 rebounds a game, definitely kind of a force in the middle, or the force in the middle, I should say, for the Hokies on that aspect. Can they replace her production? And I like to pose this to you, because you've been keeping up with them all year. You obviously saw some of the freshmen play. Is there someone to slip into her spot? Because what you feel is, if someone comes into her spot, maybe higher regarded, maybe a better overall player, that is that bouncing point to say, you already mentioned Karis Baker coming back. We already know Carly Wenzel, leading scorer, coming back next year. They'll both be, I think, seniors. But can you get that replacement in the middle, and can that person, can they go 13 and 10 a game and add that little bit extra? And if they are, who is it?
Well, that's a great question. I like the two freshmen they have on the roster this year in the post. Anaya Trent, who played a good bit in kind of a backup role, and Amani Jenkins, who didn't play as much. I think they're really good pieces. They are both highly touted freshmen. The thing about Freelon is she was really, really athletic, a little bit undersized at 6'1", but ran the floor extremely well and was very like exactly what you want from an athleticism, ability to jump up and grab rebounds. The part that was missing is they didn't really have any there was no back to the basket outlet there. Tech had that a little bit last season with Rose Mishaw playing the five. I think in my opinion, Curtis, they need two things in the transfer portal.
Okay.
They need a post player, a back to the basket post player, somebody you can kind of throw the ball into. They can go one-on-one on the block a little bit. They're a good rebounder and a good scorer. And they need a three-point shooter because they've got a lot of good role players, but not a lot of them are consistent three-point shooters. They're really two good ones are Carly Wenzel and Karis Baker. And as a result, when your two leading scorers are not shooting it well or being limited or just aren't having a good day from three, you need to have another outlet. And you saw it last year with Matilda Eck and Lonnie White. They were able to make threes. They were able to kind of space it a little bit. Now, Tech was much better defensively this year. Tech rose about 75 spots in adjusted defense from last year to this year. Tech was a top 25, top 30 defensive team this year. The offense took a little bit of a dip, though. And I think if you can it'll probably – the defense might dip slightly with Freelon gone because she was such an integral piece. But I think if you can go out and get a big in the portal and get a three-point shooter, and then I don't know who might leave. I would expect probably 1 to 2 players to portal out just because that's kind of the norm. But they've got a good core to build around, and I think that's the exciting thing. You can kind of identify the exact roles that you need. Hey, we need a starting center to come in and get us 12 and 10 a game, right? And our freshman bigs who are going to come in, they're going to take the next step and they're going to play a little bit more and they're going to take some of that pressure off. Like Anaya Trent was really good defensively, but she was limited offensively as a true freshman. And they've got two really good, highly touted recruits coming in, 2 McDonald's All-American game nominees. They got a guard from Washington State, like way out west, Kaleo Anderson coming in, and she's an ESPN like top 70 recruit. And then they have Ariana Harris-Mott, who is a 6'4" post player from Maryland, a Boo Williams product that's coming in. So they continue to add good pieces. I think they're probably 1 or 2 pieces away. Like I said, in the portal, you add those players and everyone else, the role players continue to get better. And I think you've got a really good team on your hands, and you probably do. Maybe next year you're a 6 or a 7 seed. And I think that's kind of the next step for this program. And I really like where they stand. And it'll be very interesting to see who they go after in the portal, who's available. And again, it's so much about money now that it makes stuff a little bit more difficult than it would before. But if you can keep everybody together, you're in your spot.
Yeah. Let me ask this one last thing before we move over to men's, and we'll let Tally ride on that a little bit. and this is kind of a segue question because this is like kind of a little bit of a comparison. When we look at the NIL challenges that basketball has, is it significantly more difficult in the women's game with NIL versus the men's, or what are the challenges in women's that we may not see in the men's and vice versa?
Well, I think the big that's a great question. I think the in the women's game, the ceiling, like if you say the UConn's a good example, right? If you say UConn's payroll is X, UConn was an overall number 1 seed in this year's NCAA tournament. You say that team has the most payroll of anyone in the country. What is it? The gap from that to the final at-large team that made the NCAA tournament, I would say, is like this. It's pretty small. Like the teams at the top obviously are really, really, really well resourced, but it's kind of scrunched a little bit.
Gotcha.
Because in the men's game, it's like the Dukes and the Carolinas are writing blank checks, and the teams kind of in that next tier, like the Virginias, the Louisvilles, they're like double what Virginia Tech's roster was this year. And Virginia Tech's competing for an at-large spot. You saw Virginia was a 3 seed. So like that, there's just a giant gulf in the men's where the amount of money it takes to fund an NCAA tournament team in the men's continues to skyrocket, and it continues to take crazy jumps up. On the women's side, it's not that steep. Like I would say $1 million in the women's game is a ton. Like that is, but $1 million in the men's game, that might not even get you a starter. And I think that is the difference. Curtis?
I was going to say, one player? Could you get one player for $1 million? One starter for $1 million?
In the men's game?
Maybe.
I mean, that's people were talking about this on Twitter earlier. If you guys remember Nigel Pack from Miami, he transferred from Kansas State to Miami a couple years ago. First era of the portal. This was when the Canes went on their Final Four run. And it was like a 2-year, $800,000 deal. And he was like, that was like one of the biggest deals at the time. Man, you've got guys moving places for like $2 to $3 million for 1 year now.
Yeah.
And it's very, very difficult because there are some teams in the ACC, but when you're a school at Virginia Tech, where you've also got a football program, and the football program is getting the majority of your rev share and the majority of your NIL, which it should. It's a little bit different from a place like VCU, where VCU doesn't have football. So VCU can invest all it wants essentially into men's basketball.
Yep.
And there are some mid-majors that have really been able to take advantage of it. And there are some power conference schools like Wake Forest and Notre Dame that simply do not have the resources for their men's basketball programs. And it's a really tough spot to be in, because if you want to make coaching changes, you got to show that you have the money and resources to get an attractive coach. But the reason you're in the position you are, unless you just have a flat out terrible coach, is because you don't have resources. It's a cycle. And you don't see that as much on the women's side, because your typical NCAA tournament roster in terms of payroll is lower. So it's easy, again, $1 million in women's basketball, that could get you 2, 3, 4 starters, maybe.
Yeah. You got a much flatter curve.
Yes.
On those payrolls.
Yeah, it's a lot of numbers, man, and it's so interesting, and that's why I think what the women are doing is very exciting, because if they get a bit more investment, they can go from being a 9 seed in the tournament to being a 6 or a 5 seed. Like, you're not, the gap is much smaller than it is on the men's side.
So real quick, who is this? Another Tech W.
Oh, you hold this one right here.
The one above that one, where it says the NIL challenge is the same. Brian Franklin wants it all. So I've heard a lot of people have taken this stance, and the only thing that I say about it is Mike Young has been here how many years? 7 years. James Franklin, he just got here. So what is the caveat of what happened before now? Like, I don't think it's a James Franklin problem. And I'm not saying that people are blaming James Franklin because of Tech basketball not performing well, but I think that some people use that as a lazy argument. You can't sustain a good basketball program year in and year out without having a budget, without having the money to keep players, pay players. I understand that. We had a roster this year that could have made the tournament. Some of the games that we lost, we were out coached. Some of the games that we won, Mike out coached the other coach. So I'm not saying that he's a bad coach. I just have been hearing a lot about, well, you know, Tech's going all in on football and it doesn't leave anything for the other programs. The other programs have to sell themselves to get a share of the money. And I'm not saying that Mike Young isn't doing that. But anyway, that just segues us into talking about basketball on the men's side. So, David, I'm going to be quiet and let you kind of jump in on this rant that I've kind of went on and set me straight.
No, well, I think it's a great point. Think back to last men's basketball season. Virginia Tech won 13 games. Mm-hmm. And after the season, the Virginia Tech administration essentially admitted that it underestimated how much it took to compete and severely underfunded the program. It's like, yeah, you only won 13 games because you didn't have money to retain guys. That Tech was in a much better position this year. Like the jump Tech took from last year to this year, when it went from, somehow finishing with eight ACC wins with that bad of a roster, but only winning 13 overall, to being on the NCAA tournament bubble this year. Huge jump. And Tech did really well in the offseason last year in terms of getting the funding right to give Tech a chance.
Yeah.
But your point is exactly right. The Hokies should have made the NCAA tournament this year.
Right.
They had the roster capabilities of making the NCAA tournament, but they dealt with injuries, of course, but they also did not necessarily – they didn't close games, to be frank. And that falls back on everybody involved.
So another question too, David. I don't want to cut you off, but another question just of me watching. Neo got a lot of, I don't want to use the word hate, but he got a lot of people that was on his case through the year. I understand it. You know what I'm saying? If you're supposed to be the star, they bring you in to be the star, and you fail at certain position or certain times of the year, you're gonna catch that flack. You may know a little bit more than us. How hurt was he? Because to me, it seemed that he was a much different player before he started getting a couple of injuries than he was toward the end of the year. How much of that do you think was confidence to compare it to injury?
Well, he got banged up with his ankle November. Around, I think if you remember, he took a spill when Tech was playing in the Bahamas.
Yep.
And it was like, oh my gosh, is he going to come back in the game? And he did. But Mike Young told us in January that for basically a month or two that Neo had kind of been being he hadn't been practicing much extra because they were trying to basically save him. Like he was banged up to the point where he could play and he could do the normal practice, but it wasn't like he was necessarily doing one-on-one individual drills.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So he's not necessarily working on his craft. And the other thing is, I think he overcompensated a little bit just by nature, by human nature with the injury. Because if your ankle's hurt, well, you might put a little bit of pressure on your other ankle, but that throws off your shooting motion.
Yeah.
And it's like, then you're overcompensating with your shot. And he went on that cold spell in January.
Yeah, he did.
And that really hurt because when Tyler Johnson's out and Toby Luau's out and you're dealing with all these other – it's just at the same time, though, man, the number of games that they had. I mean, trust me, man, I'm sitting there in the Moody Center in Dallas. I was front and center. I was the only Virginia Tech media member there when Boopy Miller had that buzzer beater on Virginia Tech. I mean,
That was crazy.
I literally was even with him where he shot that on the court, my vantage point behind the basket. I mean, that changes where you make free throws and don't turn the ball over in the final seconds. You win that game. At Miami, if you don't foul when it's a tie game and they're in the bonus,
why are you taking me through all of these games? Why did Toby Lawal go foul him? And he wasn't even he just ran to the 3-point line and fouled the man. The hottest guy on the court.
Yeah. I hate to bring all that up, but my point is that despite all that, there were chances for wins, man.
For real.
And it's part players got to go out and make plays, but also in those key moments down the stretch, you got to close out. You've got to coach better. Those guys have to be prepared. And I think the Stanford game is a great example. You don't lose a 13-point lead in the final 3 minutes by one thing. It's a perfect storm. And the difficult part is I thought Virginia Tech, to circle back around, Tally, to what you originally asked, I thought Virginia Tech did a good enough job giving Mike Young and this coaching staff the resources to compete this year.
Mm-hmm.
They had a good enough roster, and they just didn't go out there and win enough games. It's as simple as that.
Exactly.
And the tough part is you talk about marketing yourself. If you're a Virginia Tech fan, knowing that a little money goes a longer way in the women's game than the men's game, the women are coming off an NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
The men declined an NIT bid, which is a whole nother story. You've got a football program that is turning things around with one of the best head coaches in the sport.
Right.
What program are you going to give money to? You said it yourself. You have to prove that you deserve the right resources. So it's not like, oh my gosh, all these resources are being diverted to football necessarily, because from my understanding, Tech will at least have what it had last season as far as resources go.
Okay.
But it's like, if you want more, you kind of got to prove that you deserve more.
I don't know, man. And another thing with me, again, I'm not a coach. I'm not a recruiter. I'm a salesperson. So I always look at things from a sales perspective. Again, this is just me looking at it. Isaiah Vick is a decent basketball player, on the verge of being a good basketball player, 2 years removed from high school, went to prep school. I'm not saying Tech isn't on him. I don't know how the NIL works on players, how much you give to a certain player, but I do know he's from Virginia, and I do know that the Vick family is Virginia Tech. I don't think that you have to sell Virginia Tech to a kid like that, and I don't think that you have to sell Isaiah Vick to Virginia Tech. I just don't understand why he's not there. I just think that low-hanging fruit like that is the thing that makes me feel like, has the game passed the coaching staff by at Virginia Tech? I would be getting legacy kids like that just for nostalgia, just for Carmelo Anthony's son can play, but did he really do anything this year? You know, they didn't really have a good coach, but there was no way that they were letting him not be highlighted to go to Syracuse. Yep. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that's a
great point. We don't want to rehash the Steph Curry conversation.
Yeah, so I don't want to go into all that, but I'm just saying it's not the same. You know, with the Vicks being football players, I understand it's a different sport, but I'm just saying it's little things like that. The game within the game, where you can sell tickets, where you can sell the program a little bit more. Hey, it's going to be Vic night. I don't know. But we talk about Michael Vick so much. Put his fucking nephew on the team, and let's see if we can sell some more tickets and raise some more money. Maybe. I don't know. But that's just me. On little things that I see that I think we can improve on, but David really kind of hit the nail on the head with what he came into, taking a rant and actually putting it into some decent words so everybody can kind of follow. We had a good enough team to win, to be a tournament team. Again, another Tech W. He said very low team IQ, very low IQ team. As a coach, which is right, but as a coach, you have to know that team. You have to know who needs to be on the floor at certain times so we can close a game out.
And that
Kobe,
was
go ahead, Curtis.
That was my biggest issue with those 3 or 4 losses, giving up sizable leads in the last 3 minutes. If it happens one time, okay, we'll coach them up. If it happens a second time, it's like somebody needs to come off the floor during this period. We need to make – but in those 3 games, it didn't happen. It almost happened the 4th. I don't know if you were in Syracuse that night. Syracuse was that close. And I would have lost my shit that night because it's like, why are you keep running at the last 3 minutes with 7+ point leads? You're running the same 5 guys. You're running the same plays. And it has failed 3 times because we go back and look at those 3 games, all buzzer beaters, all late game chokes. I'll say it, chokes, players, staff, whatever, whoever you want to blame. You win those 3 games, they're playing last weekend. Because at that point in time, what's the record? 24-9? You're in. Heck, you might even be a 7 seed. All right, Brian, what do you have? I'm sorry. You started saying it, I'm like, oh, Tally's rehashing.
Well, no, so we put it to a good point now because we got it to a point. We've assessed what's going on with this year. We've assessed how things are looking from a talent standpoint, from an output standpoint. It wasn't exactly what they wanted. In the root of the cause, there's probably a lot of things in there. I mean, we mentioned injuries, we mentioned not being able to close out games, we mentioned some of those struggles that Neo had. But let's focus on Mike Young a little bit from a future perspective because we're looking at him kind of heading into this kind of lame duck year. But David, as you pointed out earlier, you're not necessarily getting more money into the NIL this year, more than likely. But you're also at a point with a lame duck coach. It's going to be harder to build a roster than it was this past year, even with the same money, even if everyone else stands pat because of that situation. What's Tech's strategy kind of moving forward? Are they going to look towards like having a coach in waiting? And to your point, until that investment comes in, I don't know if landing a big splash outside of that is a possibility in the near term.
It's a complicated situation, man. And that's like, imagine if their pitch this offseason was, we made the NCAA tournament and we've got guys from an NCAA tournament team coming back. Or even, oh, man. we went to the NIT. I mean, I was going to ask like what you thought about that. I saw the comment about Ace Custis, man. This is a program with NIT history. Like Hokies have won it twice. Ace Custis and David Jackson, who are on staff now, were on that team. And
so Ace Custis is not dead, Jim. FYI, he's literally on the staff now.
Yeah, but
metaphorical grave. Yes.
No, but I mean, you're in a weird spot because you can't. And Wake Forest and Notre Dame and Pitt. Pitt has Jeff Capel coming back for another year, man.
Oh God.
But there are a lot of programs that are in this exact same spot where you don't really have the kind of money to go out and, A, get rid of the current coach, but then B, go out and shell out resources for a new coach to get a better roster. You just don't really have that. If you run it back with the same amount of money, it kind of depends on what you can get at value. But your chances to win are more difficult. And it's it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I believe you said that earlier, Brian. And it's really difficult. And I'm interested, when the portal opens in about 2 weeks, interested to see how the Hokies attack it. What I will say is losing, I am expecting of Dallas to leave, whether or not he's going to seek professional opportunities or portal somewhere else. That frees up a good chunk of space in terms of payroll. That should help a little bit. And maybe if you get a slight bump, it would help too. But you're just in this weird middle ground where you look over to Charlottesville and they had about double your payroll this year. And if you don't do anything, they're going to have like triple your payroll next year.
Yeah.
But to Tally's point earlier, like why, if there are questions about the staff,
Right.
about the administration, if I'm a big donor, why would they have not proven that I should give them my money. Like I'm thinking about this from a fan's perspective.
So exactly. So my thing is I'm tired of having the conversation. So most of the time in the chats, even on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, like I'm fatigued at having the conversation about money. Again, coming at it from a sales perspective, you're never gonna get where you want to go unless you ask for it. You got to have something to show, and you got to ask. A year ago, we talked about football. Well, we can't compete because of this, and then we get rid of a coach. Well, we can't get this coach because we don't have enough money. Lo and behold, James Franklin walks through the door. So it can happen. You can get certain things to happen. I'm not saying you get there overnight. I'm not saying you get there in a year. But if you're showing improvement, steady improvement, or you're showing a plan, sometimes it's not even improvement, because some coaches are just out here lulling the freaking AD to sleep, and they're just giving them what they want. So if you have a plan, you can get to a certain position. I just think Mike's happy to be there. That's been my stick on Mike. I just think that he's a great guy, and sometimes great guys finish last. We don't need a great guy. We need a good guy and a little bit of an asshole.
All right, can I close out basketball with this, David?
Well, I think
David was going to say something.
Well, I was going to say you also have to have the right people in place.
Yeah, that's true.
To get stuff accomplished. I mean, part of the reason that Virginia Tech has James Franklin is because the Board of Visitors said we are appointing this search committee to go find the next coach. And in part because Whit Babcock went to the Board of Visitors and outlined this plan, Jay Pearson and Ryan McCarthy and a couple others worked on this funding plan. Virginia Tech now, all of a sudden, over the next couple of years, is going to invest $229 million into athletics. James Franklin's not here if that does not happen.
True.
But that does not happen if a guy like Jay Pearson, a guy like Ryan McCarthy are not in the current positions they're in. And they're not the ones that are pushing stuff along. You have to have the right people in place, and they have to want to do something about it.
Yeah. Like when thinking about it from like a business perspective or a project management perspective, you got to have like that project champion that's kind of moving things in the right direction, even if they're not the ones that are touching the day-to-day operations of the program. You've got to have somebody that's ringing that bell consistently, whether it's, and that can't always be your coach. Like at some point, you've got to have advocates in the front office as well, and in the AD office that are ringing the bell on your behalf to kind of move things in the way that you need to do them from a financing standpoint. And I feel like basketball doesn't necessarily have that, and some of that is the output we've seen on the court. And I think some of that is just basketball hasn't always been the bell cow at Virginia Tech. So there isn't that like natural voice to say, we need to get this thing where we're consistently competitive in the ACC, competing for an ACC championship, making the tournament, once every 4 years at minimum. Like we don't have that kind of voice, I think, in that group that's really ringing that bell on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
So, David, real quick.
I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this.
Oh no. This is more.
Okay, I didn't know if you were gonna go on another rant.
Nah, I'm not going on another tangent with basketball. I got mine out. But here's my question: if Mike Young pulls things together, makes the tournament next year, it's all hunky dory. He's going to get extended 3 years. He'll get a solid contract. He'll take a hometown discount. What happens if he can't pull things together? I'm looking at the records here from the last few years. It's a 16-16 season. What happens? Because the contract is up at that point, right?
Let me ask you this. If Virginia Tech needed to hire a new men's basketball coach, who's hiring him?
Oh!
That's
Search
a great
committee.
question.
The
That's a
search
great
committee
question.
actually gets shit done.
Probably, but
Just-
and at that
drop
point,
the
like
ball basketball.
so I guess that's another thing. Like we've
David
now got an
Cunningham,
AD
Paul
where
Payne,
in the two
right
biggest the two sports that actually make money for your school,
The AD can't hire him.
the AD is now not trusted to hire that coach.
that's the difficult part. Like seriously, there are just so many moving parts in terms of the administration, and the Virginia Tech did not let Whit Babcock hire the football coach, and he was involved.
Hold on. Maybe Buzz Williams will get fired from Maryland, and it's a layup for.
You do not, Curtis. You're kidding yourself. You don't want Buzz back here.
All I can remember is that team should have been.
You're just all you're remembering is going to a Sweet 16.
You're damn right.
You're not. I mean,
Stop cussing.
heck, man,
Hey.
if all you remember is Hunter Couture blasting Duke in the ACC tournament championship game, you'll be great.
Remember, he made 3 consecutive tournaments.
Oh yeah.
So
Get it the fuck out of here.
But hold on, that is Witt's best hire as AD, right?
Buzz.
That was his
Yeah,
best,
man. It would either
that
be.
was his best hire.
Yeah, I mean,
No,
okay.
no, Phil Martelli is not coming to Virginia Tech.
Martelli
He's
just
not.
signed a contract extension.
He
by
just
the way.
got an extension, and his next step is probably going to be to go up north to Villanova.
And the way VCU is able to put money into that, like I don't know if we can necessarily offer him more than what VCU's doing.
I
Hold
would say.
on. We'll do this behind paywalls right here.
I mean, I would. Here's the thing. I would say that VCU, not to get off on a big tangent, but VCU VCU Villanova, like being a mid-major with no football program,
Yep.
those are great positions to be in. And the VCU men's basketball program, man, it basically runs itself.
It does.
Like
They have not missed on a coaching hire in 20 years. My neighbor's a VCU alum, and we were talking about it. Go back to when they hired Jeff Capel. Jeff Capel and every single guy they have hired in the last 22 years has got them to the tournament, won some games, and got a bigger job.
Yeah, but Curtis, to your point about what happens, it's a very interesting discussion because the Virginia Tech Board of Visitors did not let the current athletic director hire the football coach. Like there would not have been if that group trusted him to do so. There wouldn't have been a search committee. Well, the search committee. Thankfully for Virginia Tech, the search committee was involved, and as has been discussed, Jay Pearson, Ryan McCarthy, Bud Foster pulling the right strings and getting James Franklin to Blacksburg. Do you want to assemble a search committee to hire a new basketball coach? That might be what you have to do, but but the fact that you can't just go have your AD hire a guy, it makes it a little bit difficult. Since Phil Martelli stuff keeps coming up, I think he's a great coach, and I think he fits VCU perfectly. And it's always like I have friends that live in Richmond that are diehard VCU fans, and that program's fun, man. And you could argue that that the only reason Virginia Tech and VCU are even close to being comparable jobs is because the Hokies are in the ACC and the Rams are in the A10, which is only really a 1 or 2 bid league most of the time.
Yeah.
But if VCU is putting as much into the program as Virginia Tech and is in the A10, that kind of tells you all you need to know, man.
100%. All right. Let's move. Great basketball talk. We just did an hour on basketball. That's how impressive you are, Mr. Cunningham. But let's get over to spring football. A lot of different stuff going on. And so we just want to hit more than a few here. Give me some from what you've seen and what you've heard, not just quarterback observation, because it seems like Ethan Grunkemeyer is just like you were doing the little thing earlier. It seems like it's like that. Like Ethan Grunkemeier's here, everybody else is well below. Do you get that feel in person?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Grunkemeyer is the guy. They wouldn't have brought him in otherwise. And it's interesting getting to know James Franklin and how he portrays himself to me and how he builds a relationship with us. Something that has come across, which makes sense, and all coaches go through this. But James Franklin and the coaching staff don't want to say, hey, Ethan Grunkemeyer is going to be our starting quarterback in practice 5 of spring ball.
Yeah.
Because when you are preaching open competition to every single player on the roster, and then you pencil a guy in and tell the media, hey, this guy's going to be our starting quarterback, you're just going – you're giving mixed messages to the team.
Yeah. I can see that, yeah.
But Curtis, to your question, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a way that Grunkemeyer is not the starting quarterback. That's why you bring him in, and he's got a great relationship with Danny O'Brien, the quarterback's coach. And from my understanding, the Virginia Tech wide receivers have been excited about just having a quarterback that is as pass friendly, if that's the right way to phrase it, as Grunkemeyer. I mean, he's a pass first guy.
D, we know one person who is not going to be the quarterback, AJ Brand.
Yeah,
because he is moving to receiver from what we've seen.
Yeah,
Were you the first to report that?
It was Andy.
It was Andy. Okay.
Well, but I think I mean Andy and of course Colby Crawford and Damian Sordelette, all the people that were at practice and at interviews the other day got that. But okay, you move AJ Brand, who's a really good athlete out of South Carolina. You move him from quarterback to wide receiver. You pare down your quarterback room a little bit. Now you got 4 guys in there. You got a redshirt sophomore and like 2 redshirt freshmen and a true freshman. That's a really young room. Yeah. But I think they really like what they have in Grunkemeyer, man, and he's your quarterback of the future. And you go from having a run-first quarterback in Kyron Jones to a pass-first quarterback in Ethan Grunkemeyer. That is a big difference as far as players, just the working relationship behind the scenes. And Curtis, to your point, I cannot I'm interested to see how Bryce Baker continues to progress. Obviously, he's kind of a local guy from like the Winston-Salem area, Greensboro area. And he was highly recruited, but it kind of seems like Gronkemeyer's job to lose. It'd be hard to imagine a world where, considering how well he played at Penn State last year, he's not the starter. But I can't fault the coaching staff for not coming out and being like, yep, he's our starter, because the one thing you don't want to do is say there's no competition.
Right.
Yeah. And especially when you're coming in and you're preaching like nobody's job is safe. I'm evaluating everybody across the board. As a new head coach, you're doing that regardless. And, I think it's also one of those things where it doesn't want to seem like he's, potentially playing favorites with Penn State guys either. So you got that dynamic that's thrown in there as well. But to that point, I think the one thing that I'm seeing consistently when I'm following on social media and things like that, you've got Penn State accounts that have obviously been in our mentions across the board, but they have not said one bad thing about Grunk and are very fucking disappointed that he didn't stick around even with them getting Rocco coming over. So that alone, and obviously the output that he had, the back half of last season, I think kind of speaks for itself on that front. So it's exciting that, feel like you got a quarterback that knows how to get the ball out, knows how to throw accurate balls, can get the ball to guys in different places on the field. I think that's one of the things we've struggled with, really going back a number of years, not just with Kyron Jones at the helm there. Those kind of intermediate seam routes. I mean, things that require precise location. Those are starting to probably come back into play in the offense a little more consistently with somebody with that type of accuracy and poise in the pocket. So excited about that. I know we've seen some word come out with some position shuffles along the offensive line. We heard some conversations with Johnny Garrett sliding inside at guard, some kind of being that swing player. From what you've heard, from what you've seen, read, all that, what are they doing? And does any of this have to do with the fact that Howland's kind of out for the spring at this point?
I think so. I mean, obviously that hurts your tackle depth. I think I don't know that I would pencil him in as a starter at one of the tackle spots, but Logan Howland, Oklahoma transfer. He's played a lot of ball, man. He's one of your most experienced guys. And Justin Terry, the Ohio State transfer who's with Matt Moore at West Virginia, he's also been a little bit banged up. But I think right now it's been interesting. Montavious Cunningham's at right tackle. Johnny Garrett's at right guard. Part of it is Matt Moore, I think, has a good feeling for what some of these guys can do at their normal positions. And something that James Franklin talked about is we just got to put the best 5 guys on the field. So you got to test stuff. And that's the perfect time in spring ball. Just kind of mess around a little bit and go, all right, let's throw Johnny Garrett in here at right guard and see how he holds up. And if he's playing pretty well, all right, cool. That gives us another option. From Franklin gave a good example of last week. He said, sometimes say your right tackle gets hurt. Sometimes your next best player is not your backup right tackle. Your next best player is your backup right guard. And then you slide your right guard over to right tackle. So I think it's continuing.
Hey, that's what I do. That's what I do on the game all the time. I do that on the game all the time. It worked.
It's continuing to develop depth. And I think, honestly, bringing Matt Moore back is huge. Just from a continuity standpoint, man.
I think, what is it? Has it been 4 coaches in 4 years or 3 coaches in 4 years? Offensive line coach.
We had Crook for like a year and a half.
Like 4 coaches. It's like 4 coaches in 6 years, man.
That's crazy. That's nuts. Too.
I mean, Vice, Rudolph, Crook, and Moore, dating back to 2021.
Yeah.
4 coaches, 5 years. I mean, and so just having a guy, but the big thing is your offensive line coach and your offensive coordinator have to be on the same page. And it was interesting when we talked to Matt Moore back in February. It seems like he and Ty Howell really understand each other. Just that relationship of how the offensive line is panning out. And offensive line, I would say, is one of the hardest spots to recruit just because you've got to develop guys over time. And being able to keep Matt Moore, which means keeping all these guys and then adding a bunch of Penn State guys, adding a couple other portal guys. It's like, all right, that group is much different from where it was last year.
But we all agree you actually have to recruit and attempt to get offensive linemen in the door.
Why would you think otherwise?
5 over 3 years? It seemed like you just wanted to kill yourself. Tally, what you got?
It's why we ran into a situation last year where we had Aiden Lynch being the next guy up at tackle, and that's not. I'm not trying to knock Aiden Lynch when I say that, but I don't think he was not ready to have to play the number of snaps he played last year. But you didn't have any tackle depth, and so all of a sudden you've got a guy that is probably at least a year away from you being comfortable with him playing that number of snaps. Ended up getting kind of thrown to the fire, and I don't think it helped him or his development or his perception, I think, with the fan base, throughout that process. And, getting guys in the door that, with a guy like Terry and a guy like Howland that have, are either highly touted or have played a significant number of snaps at this point, I think that bodes well, and that gives you that, position versatility to be able to see what Johnny Garrett can do at guard. And obviously we've seen Cunningham play guard and tackle, alternatively throughout his time here as well. So having guys with that position versatility where you can go a man or two down at guard or tackle and still feel like you've got a decent five that you can put out there.
For sure.
And I think another thing too is just with the recruiting of offensive linemen, a lot of times, like I think David just said, like offensive linemen, you have to develop at that position. And it's so hard to like go into a high school and know who's going to be a good offensive lineman and how long it's going to take them to be ready, because most high school offensive linemen are either much bigger than everybody else they're playing, or they're just more athletic. So depending on who they're playing, they just look so much better. But when you get to college, everybody's big. What I like about what they've done is they've brought a lot of linemen in, and a lot of them are already at playing size. So even if they're not on the field to contribute in the 2 or 3 deep, they're going to give some of those defensive players a good look, because it's at least a body that is the right size to be playing in the ACC. Because you can go back to some of our defensive linemen, it's like, oh my God, Burgos just killed Clemens. He's going to have a good year. And then he can't fucking tackle nobody on South Carolina when he's in the backfield. So, yeah, I mean, getting a good look at practice probably helps. So I'm glad that we at least have some depth there, so some of these guys can develop, can get some practice run. And they went and got a lot of them. I think we may have like 9, 10 linemen that are coming in. Out of those, it's like somebody's got to be ready to step up and do something. So when I say do something, hey, he just rolled his ankle. We're going to wrap him up, put it back in. I need you to go give me a series. Last couple of years, we didn't even have that. Like we just had nobody that could step up and go play, or we didn't trust anybody enough to be able to go do that. So I'm definitely, excited about getting just a little bit deeper on that offensive line, so we can determine who the best 5 are, or 7.
And you say that, Tally, you start from where to where you were last year. This year, truly guys who are offered, somewhat rated, are coming from good. It's 17.
That's crazy.
17 offensive linemen. And I know a lot of freshmen, right, Cunningham? A lot of freshmen. But that's what you have to do. You have to just stack, and you have to pray 3 will come out of this class.
You don't have to pray. You just have to develop.
You have to pray.
I mean, what you have to do is
I was going to say, hey, yeah, we ain't going to go into no Bible study in here, because I'm going to tell y'all right now.
I mean, you can
if
do
you
that
think
too.
that you're just going to be a millionaire by sitting at home and praying, you ain't. You better get in that Bible.
No, but Curtis, what you have to do is you got to get a lot of them, and not all of them are going to pan out.
True.
Right.
But that's why you go get you get 5 or 6 linemen in a class, and hope that 2 or 3 of them hit.
Yep.
One high level, one okay, one.
Well, see, even, and I was going to say, even with that too, in the years past, that's kind of how it's been. You had this one guy that you were like, we got to get him on the field right now, because that's what we need. Well, they went and got about 4 that have about the same talent level. You know what I'm saying? When you look at like Tommy Wilder's not on campus yet. You know what I'm saying? So, of course, his development is going to be behind some of the guys that are there. But you look at like a Marlon Bright. These are high-level football players. These are high-level guards. High-level offensive linemen. So you went out and get 3 to 4 of those guys, and you say, like you said, if we develop them in 2 hit, and we're bringing in 5 more next year, like it's what we got to do. That's what you have to do. You have to build in the trenches. There's no other way to win football games.
True.
Yeah, and one of the things we weren't doing is that we weren't recruiting, but we also really weren't attacking the portal at that position either. And I know that position is very hard to bring in high caliber players in the portal anyway. But when you weren't doing both, it's like we're not backfilling, but we're also not getting better on the front end either. And so you get situations like we've had the last 2 or 3 years where the offensive line is really, even with some of the problems that we had at quarterback, like a lot of those were offensive line related to some degree. So you get this trickle down effect where you're not good up front and it affects every other position group on the team.
True.
Let's move over to wide receiver. I mean, we know that James Franklin is a Aiden Green disciple at this point. He's been hyping him up a lot and talking about him and really highlighting his leadership and his ability to come in there and not be afraid to say what he's thinking. I think that's been a big thing that Franklin has complimented him on. But let's go beyond him a little bit. Who else is standing out in that room that you've seen so far?
Well, I think it's funny, Franklin. You can tell how Franklin feels very easily about a position group because, like wide receiver, like last week he was asked about the wide receivers and he was like, there are a lot of guys who are unproven, and they have not done enough for me to talk about them. Like it's like, hey, you got a lot of Chance Wiggins, Keelan Adams. Like, how's that room coming along? And he's like, we got a lot of guys that need to step up. We got Aiden Green, Keyshawn Brown from Duke. He's the big one. And Franklin touched on him the other day, and I think he's going to be an instant impact guy. I mean, he was very, very productive at Duke last year. Fontel Mines raved about him. I thought this was very interesting. I mentioned this on our podcast. We spoke with Fontel Mines back in February, and he told me that he recruited Brown's from Winston-Salem. He recruited Brown, and Brown visited Virginia Tech for a camp, and Fontel did not offer him. And this time around in the portal, Fontel said the first thing he did was he reached out and apologized for not offering it. Yeah, he was like, "That's my bad, man. Like I missed." Like I feel like you don't really see that kind of honesty, just in that process like that. But I mean, he could not stop raving about Brown, and he's very reliable in terms of I think he catches everything. He's maybe a little bit undersized, but I think it's kind of exactly what you want in terms of bringing another experienced guy to pair with Green. After that, Brian, it's pretty open-ended, man. Like, one of the reasons I think sliding A.J. Brand over to wide receiver is so interesting is because it's kind of an open competition. You scroll through the list, Marley and Jackson, he's had his arm in a sling. He was the Louisiana Tech transfer that they brought in.
Yep.
But this is also an offensive coordinator, Ty Howell, who in the past at Penn State, he and James Franklin, I know he wasn't the OC, but he's been a tight ends coach, and they love using tight ends. So the nice thing is you've got a really good tight end room to kind of maybe balance it out a little bit. But they need – wide receiver is a room I look at and they'll go, they need guys to step up, man. Like there's kind of an open competition, outside of Green and Brown. It's like everything else is open, man. You got to go prove it. And this is a great opportunity for Wiggins, Adams, highly touted guys like that to kind of prove that, hey, like we belong. Like, it's our turn to play.
Yeah, that room is a bunch of talented guys who are saying exactly what you're saying. They have to prove it. They all mostly were pretty high-end guys coming out of high school, played well in high school, have shown flashes at times, some in games, some at practices, some at spring games and stuff. But it's who's going to take the crown? Who's going to take? To me, you want 5. Like, who wants 3, 4, and 5? Because if you take it this year, you're likely going to have it for the next 2 years. It's going to be yours. It's going to be your show to run. Tally, what do you want to talk on next, man?
Well, I mean, we kind of brought him up already when you talk about the tight end room and the tight end room being pretty, pretty looking like it's going to be pretty good. I don't want to jump the gun, but I mean, when I look at Luke Reynolds, I just think that he's a can't miss tight end. And when I say can't miss, I don't know how far he goes. I'm not saying he's an NFL tight end, but I've seen him play a couple of games of college football, and I've seen him in some practices with the limited access that we've got, and he looks like he is head and shoulders better than what we're normally having in our tight end room. No disrespect to any of the other tight ends that we had, but have you got to take a look at Luke Reynolds and when we talk about that tight end room, and what do you think about him, David?
I mean, anytime I think of Luke Reynolds, I just go back to the Pinstripe Bowl. If you recall, he put a spin move on one of those Clemson defenders. You're talking like a tight end who looks like he's playing like running back. Mm-hmm. Just the way he moves. He's a very agile guy. He's big. The biggest thing for me, Tally, is I think he is a pretty proven blocker.
Yeah.
And the Virginia Tech tight ends struggle with blocking, man, over the last few years.
Let's get Shelton on that one.
I think Reynolds he's a tremendous upgrade. He just makes that room better. It's kind of one of those like rising tides lifts all boats thing. Like your tight end room was fine. Tech can really use the tight ends a lot under that last coaching staff. It'll be different now. And I think the interesting thing is I think Benji Gosnell is a little bit underutilized. Again, not great as a blocker, but he's been pretty reliable as a pass catching tight end.
Yeah, facts.
If you compare him with Luke Reynolds and you brought in Matt Henderson, who I believe is a Richmond guy, and
Palatine.
And I mean he's a really good athlete. And Harrison St. Germain is back. I mean, the tight end room might be one of the
Hairston. Don't forget Hairston.
Yeah. Oh, and sorry, Jarekus Hairston. I knew I was leaving somebody out. And Jarekus Hairston, I was talking to Andy and Chris about this the other day. They said they went out to practice and they were doing tight end blocking drills, and the guy who was standing out more than anybody was Hairston, and just how he was just flat out blocking dudes.
Yeah, I think it was one of the videos that they posted where Franklin got all over him in a good way, like just giving him props on his blocking. And I mean, as a tight end, that is, you got to be able to catch passes, but you got to be able to block, and you got to be able to block in space. We can go into a whole. I'm sure Brian can write up a whole show for us on pulling, ripping, reaching, different things like that. But again, big men, usually tight end, being in space, trying to block little shifty guys sometimes doesn't work. So when you're bending that corner and you're coming out and you got to block a safety or a cornerback, a lot of times they're not going to come and meet you head up. They're going to find a way to, juke you, get around you, slide under you, different things like that. So when I just watched that clip again, we haven't had a lot to watch, but I'm a tight end guy. So when I seen that, I got pretty excited as well, because I've seen us run plays or us run screens and somebody goes, why do we keep running that? I'm like, we're really only one block away. Miami running a fake field goal. I mean, horrible play call, but we were one block away from scoring a touchdown on that fake field goal. And that block would have came from a tight end. So I'm pretty sure it was a tight end.
Yeah. I mean, I look at the tight end room, and I think that is probably one of the best position rooms on the team. And I like the variety of skill sets you have, because you've got I mean, and you talk about Jarikus. I mean, he's a former walk-on, man. Like, he has worked his way up, and he caught some touchdowns last year. He paved the way for Kyron for a couple touchdown runs. I mean, he's a guy who has earned his keep. And you've got him and St. Germain and Gosnell along with Henderson and Reynolds, and that's a pretty stacked room. And that's the kind of problem you want to have.
You want to have 100. There's depth there and everything.
And to Tally's point, I mean, tight end is such an interesting position with the type of blocks that you've got to execute. I mean, you got to be able to stalk block like a wide receiver. You got to be able to block in the alley. Then you also have to do pretty much anything that a tackle would do in those tight formation run situations. So I mean, it's a very varied skill set that you have to have on top of also being a reliable receiver. And it sounds like there's going to be a whole lot more receiving than we saw with Monty last year, coming from that tight end group. So I'm excited. I think, like you said, I think this is probably, top to bottom, probably the deepest position, at least on offense, I would say. When you combine experience with ability, and then some of that, guys like Hairston that have really earned their keep and have shown flashes in various capacities over the last couple of years. Let's flip it over to defense. And I'm going to focus on the safety room to start out here. There was some delay in kind of finalizing the coaching staff, who was going to coach safeties, who was going to coach cornerbacks. Didn't really go out and get anybody in the portal to shore up that room. What's your feeling on that room, and is there any new faces that are kind of mixing in there that we didn't see last year?
Well, I think it's good that Tech got Quentin Reddish back. I think that's important, but he's also coming off an injury. That's difficult, man. I will group the safeties and corners together because I think they are in kind of different situations. I look at the cornerback room and I go, I see a lot of guys with experience and a lot of guys that can play right now. And there might be a point where it's like, man, we've got more corners that we want. Like I wish we could play, we got to sit one or two of these guys because they all can't be on the field at the same time with the corners. I look at safeties and I go, there are a lot.
You go ahead, don't you?
There are questions, man. Like, I'm just interested. I'm interested to see how that dynamic plays out. You bring back some guys like Tyson Flowers. I think Franklin spoke about his leadership ability, and I think that's great. But Flowers was a little bit hit or miss at times last year.
David said, "We glad you're a leader." But we need people who can tackle.
That's being kind in some ways.
People that get tackled.
Well, you need
leaders. Facts. We need
leaders. And he's a guy that last year, after the losses, stood in front of the media and spoke. That takes a lot of guts, man.
Yeah, facts.
With the season going the way it did, what can under a different coaching staff can he kind of take that next step a little bit and be a little bit more consistent? And I think you look at that room as a whole, and that's kind of a theme. It's a lot of unproven guys who it's like, can they all kind of vibe? And I don't want to get off topic and go look at cornerbacks, but there's so much experience there.
Yeah.
And also I really like a lot of the young guys that are kind of coming up the ranks. It's like, okay, a Knowledge Harold, right? It seems like he's chomping at the bit a little bit, ready to play. It just seems a bit of a different situation, and I'm curious to see how the coaching staff kind of manages it, because it seems like the safeties and corners are in two different spots.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know what we're doing with that safeties position, just to be honest.
Let me ask this real quick on Curtis. I'll let you go ahead. Sorry.
Well, to be honest, truth, I think it's I'm not trying to downplay the position, but don't spend money on safeties. The NFL doesn't spend money on safeties. The teams that normally spend money on safeties, they're usually ass. Teams that just they figure out the safety room, you figure out what they can do. And my thought is kind of what you said, David. It's but with the exception of Reddish, because you feel like Reddish is young. He took a step last year. He got hurt, but he took a legit step from first year to second year. I think they're figuring out each of these guys can do something okay. If the front seven can be okay and the outside guys can cover, we can figure out what each can do. And when we get to that particular point of the game, y'all two go in because y'all are good at playing cover two high. Y'all are good at playing cover one. You can play somewhat man on a tight end. Matchups across the boards. I would love, David, in 9 months, because that'll be Christmas, to get snap counts on safeties. I guarantee you, with the exception of Reddish, the other ones are going to be level. Unless someone like a Sheldon Robinson steps out, because if a young guy jumps in,
Robinson looks like a grown man.
He does look like a grown man. And I'm saying if he takes a step, then those guys are done to. Because it's going to be Reddish at strong, it's going to be him at free. And those other guys are just going to be hoping to get on the field for punt block. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think the dark horse of the unknown quantity in all this thing is, where does Sherrod Koval maybe fit into this conversation? Is he at a point now where he's going to be a heavy contributor, or is he still kind of floating in that 4 or 5 area in the depth chart? We saw Jordan Bass, go out there and he'll hit somebody, but there's some other areas where he struggled. I mean, I think on the whole, to Curtis's point with not really overpaying at that position, if we can get guys that can play cover 3 match and fill the alley and hang and fit properly and do all those things that you need to do from a basic standpoint, maybe that doesn't matter as much.
I do. I mean, I got a lot of confidence, and not to get us off topic, but I got a lot of confidence in the cornerback that came from Troy. Not because I watched so much of his game, but of course, being in Alabama, I've seen a lot of the Troy team play, and we've had some local kids that have went there, and I've kind of talked with some coaches, high school coaches, and Troy alums and things like that, and he was a really good player for them. He just has a lot of ability, and I'm hoping that translates to him getting significant snaps with us and contributing heavy, because I think we have a lot of talent in that room when you talk about the cornerback room, and it's a mix of a little bit of experience along with talent. Indiana showed us that you're going to need experience to win it. You know what I'm saying? So having experience is good, but they also had talent too. You can't just be old. You know what I'm saying? Like, they had experienced, talented guys. So I'm hoping that we have a good balance of that, enough in like the cornerback room that it helps with the safety, because you do see sometimes those get kind of interchanged and things like that. But I'm excited about that room. But the next thing is, what I wouldn't be excited about is being a young offensive lineman and having to block Kamari Copeland on the defensive line. Kuna, have you seen anything out of our defensive linemen? I know we've had a lot of transfers to come in, and it may be a lot of unknown things there. But as far as the defensive line, what are you kind of seeing and knowing and thinking?
Kamari Copeland's a big dude, man. He is
big, strong dude too.
I mean, Franklin basically said it that Kamari Copeland was like the number one guy. Hey, we need to make sure he's back on this team next year.
Yeah,
and I'm curious to see. And maybe Sean Spencer kind of said that too. All the interviews kind of run together. But when we had a chance to talk to Sean Spencer, he raved about Copeland. Just, man, he's a hardworking guy, and obviously he's got a lot of talent. But I'm curious to see what other guys come up around him. Like, I think Elijah Fall is a guy who quietly had a good year last year.
Yep. I agree.
Can he be a pretty good duo with Copeland? And then outside of that, it's kind of a bunch of unproven guys at tackle. A guy I'm really curious to see where he ends up is T-Ron Richardson. He's a
big dude, man.
He is a monster. He's from the Richmond area. he got rave reviews from Spencer and the coaching staff, and I think they've got a lot of guys with good work ethics in that room. Emmett Laws, I think this is his redshirt sophomore season. Maybe like this is his opportunity, I think, to kind of be a big piece.
Yeah.
As like that maybe second or third guy behind Kamari Copeland. And they brought in I'm looking at my roster here. They brought in Adarica from Penn State, and they brought in Eric Mensah from Ohio State. It's like, okay, you got some guys with experience, a little bit. The guys have been in big programs before. Can that translate over? But I'm kind of curious to see how that rest of the depth chart shakes out, kind of behind those three guys at the top. What you have in them.
Yeah, and that kind of is where so many of the positions are, it feels like, right? But I think we all feel like this. The talent level's raised. I think everybody goes back to 16 and 17, right? And that's a decade ago. First of all, that's a decade ago. And that's the last time we felt like we looked at, hey, I'm just being real. But 16 and 17, you start looking at the roster, it's like it was a lot of talent on those teams. It was a lot of talent. And I know, schemes are great, coaches are great. And James Franklin understands, I think, better than anyone. And he's said it numerous times. All this stuff's great, but if you don't have the players to compete, if you don't have the depth, you're not going to compete. And that's simple as it is. And to me, he's taken us, just from my vantage point, he's taken us like somewhere between 40, 50. You feel like it's somewhere in the 20s. Just talent-wise, just talent. I know you get the blue chip ratios, but you start looking and it's like, well, the quarterback has experience. And well, this guy has experience. Well, that guy has experience. And that's that piece you talked about, the rising tide. Well, if you have a quarterback who can play, you don't need to lean on everything. We didn't talk running backs tonight, and we're going to lay off that for a little while because that room, again, I think is when we feel like it is what it is. But, David, any last words before we close her out tonight, man?
Well, I think linebackers will just be like how they balance. We Tally mentioned Jaquez White, the Troy kid, how they balance the corners and safeties and also the strengths of the linebackers. Like, I think they bring in Keon Wiley from Penn State. And I think they really like Caleb Spencer and Curtis Jones from West Virginia. But obviously Noah Chambers had a phenomenal freshman year, but what does that look like? And I think that's the beauty of spring ball with a new coaching staff. It's like you have all this time to figure all this stuff out. You can look and go, all right, well, we're working this guy here, and this guy played really well today. All right, maybe we can give him another look. And I think for Virginia Tech fans who are excited to go to the spring game, I think that's going to be the beauty of this year's spring game is there are a lot of young guys. The talent level, as Curtis has just talked about in this program, the talent level is much better. There's more talent in this program. And as a result, there's going to be more competition. And as a result, it's going to be harder for guys to get on the field. And that's exactly what you want. And I think you're going to see that. And it's not just one position. It's across the board. And I'm curious to kind of continue to, we've got a couple weeks before the spring game, curious to see what kind of young guys or transfers, newcomers kind of crack these rotations and maybe do a little bit more than just flash at this spot or flash at that spot. Oh, hey, this guy are we going to see I'm making this up, but a Keelan Wiley, he's won the spot he's the kind of the leader at the will right now, right? Do we see a kind of any of these transfers or any of these freshmen kind of come in and make an instant impact? But it's going to be more difficult now because you have raised, again, the talent level in this program. So they're just in a much better spot. And spring ball is fun because they can get all hands on. They don't have to worry about all the constant game planning for different opponents and whatnot. It's just ball, man. And I think more than anything, every single time you see a clip, every single time you watch them, the program has started to exude toughness again. And that's what Virginia Tech football was built on.
Yeah,
there we go. Let me ask you one more question, and this is going to be directed at Tally's drinking buddy here, because you brought up the linebacker room, and not even approaching it from the well,
That's a good point.
We have that, but
Phil's had a couple beers tonight, by the way.
Phil's had a couple beers. Phil's also not Pry's biggest fan either, so we get that, but. Thinking about it from just the position group standpoint, we look at the offensive side of the ball. You retain 2 coaches on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, Pry is the guy back here, so he has familiarity with the guys that are remaining on the roster from last year, and obviously he's got a close confidant in Franklin there to kind of assess some of the guys, especially the Penn State guys that are coming in there. Does he have that kind of a unique lens to look at his position group relative to kind of where everybody else is on the defensive side of the ball?
Absolutely. I mean, he's the guy. I mean, there's no one that should know the defensive personnel for Virginia Tech better than Brent Pry, considering these are all guys he's recruited. I mean, even the guys who Tech got this offseason, he had a hand in recruiting them. I think you've seen he's refreshed, man. Like he's different. I think there's a giant weight that's been lifted off his shoulders as far as like he didn't have to deal with the day-to-day, all the pressure that comes with being the head guy. You've got so much on your plate. You can just go coach X's and O's and push your kids and be in team meeting rooms again. Like at the end of the day, I think that's what most coaches like to do. They like to recruit and develop kids and build relationships with them and push them and put them in the right positions to succeed and scheme up stuff. And that's what you're seeing from Pry. And it'll be interesting, him being the defensive coordinator. I mean, if the Hokies don't play well defensively,
It's gonna be rough on him.
It could be rough on him, but oh my gosh, David, the content that I hope we don't have it. I hope the content is. I sit here and pray the content is that guy was never a head coach, but damn it, look at that defense. Just look at it. He knows what he's doing. He's in his vibe. Let's just hope it's that way.
Yeah, I mean,
because I don't feel like sitting here having drinks every Tuesday night feeling miserable.
Yeah, well,
I wanna
he's
win.
such a good dude too.
He is.
Yeah.
Might be his problem.
Well, this is what I'll say though. I mean, just everybody knows how I felt about it when it first happened, when it went down. I was like, what are we doing? I've never seen this happen. We just fired a coach and hired him back, whatever. We are what we are now, right? So when I look at things from a holistic standpoint, you're either giving, I mean, just say we were building a house with Legos. At least now they're gonna give him bricks to build a house with. If you look at the linebacker room compared to kind of what we had, again, the talent level's raised. Like if I had to see Jaden Keller go out and not make a tackle one more time, I may have drank myself to death. Like, if I had to go see Sam Brumfield not be big enough to bring ACC running backs down, it just, you got tired of it. And it's not, I get it. All of that falls on the head coach. Brett Pry was the head coach. He's not the head coach now. So I feel like, again, this is me looking at it, sober mind, months after it's happened. I think that James Franklin knows what is expected. And I think he stepped up to say, okay, if you give me this, I can produce this. And he knows what's on the line more than just Virginia Tech. His name's been ran through the mud for the most part by Penn State people. A couple of other fan bases, but mainly them. So I think he's really out to prove something. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he's still one of the best head coaches in college football. They don't want to admit it, but he is. So I think that, I mean, this is his stop. This is where he goes out and proves, like, y'all don't realize that I've been doing this for everywhere I went. I built the program. I was at Vanderbilt. I built the program. When I was at Penn State, I built that program. So now I'm here. And if you're not going to be here and do this with me, you're not going to be here. So I think Brett Pry knows that. He wouldn't have stuck around and risked, because he's in a weird spot, man. You know what I'm saying? Coming off of him loving, he legit loves Blacksburg and loves Virginia Tech, but he did a shitty job of being a head coach. He knows that. So he's got to look all of the same people in the face everywhere he goes, and I don't think that he's taking that lightly. So that's what's in my mind. That's what I'm thinking. Phil, I'm with you. I understand where you're coming from, but let's give him just maybe a little bit of grace after the first drive of the season. Then we can start in and kind of figure out what we want to do.
You got one drive, Brent. You got one drive, Brent.
You got, yeah. I mean,
you got one drive.
It's gonna be interesting once we get to like ACC play.
Oh man!
I mean, he's just gonna be judged by such a unique light. But I think Franklin made the point that wherever he went, Pry was gonna be his top option as defensive coordinator.
Right.
You know, say for example, Franklin took the Arkansas job.
He was going there.
He'd probably taken Pry there.
Nobody bats an eye.
So why not Virginia Tech? It's just weird because he's the former head coach, but it says a lot about him and his family that they're able to kind of weather this and wear it and own it and go, we're gonna. And I think he truly is like, I want to get this program back.
Right.
And I know I did a poor job, but I want to help fix it. And I think he's in a good spot too. And again, I think he feels more free now. He feels more like himself. He can. Instead of having to deal with donors and money and managing a roster, he can just go, yeah, I like that blitz.
Yep.
Yeah, I know I don't got 2 zeros on the field.
Hey. Well, also, I mean, it's something to say, he's now in a position where he knows he's good at what he's doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so he's going into game day with that confidence. Like, I don't think he was going into a ton of games where, as a head coach, where he felt like he was 100% confident in what was going to happen in that game. Now, matchup dependent, obviously, but I don't think he always felt 100% confident in what was going on there. I think as a defensive coordinator, I mean, this is something that he's done, for over a decade at a very high level. And done it very well, and that gives you some confidence, and you've done it at a program like Penn State, so it's not like he's done it well at some middle tier Big Ten school. Yeah. He's done it in a top 4, top 5 program in the Big Ten, so I think that's something that he's going into each game on Saturday or Friday or Thursday or whatever the fuck night we're playing on, and he's in a position where he feels confident before the whistle's blown. And not dependent on the game flow going the way he wants it to.
He's back in
David.
his
Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Ty. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I know Curtis is getting ready to wrap us up. Are you going to the spring game?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll be working, but yeah, I'll be.
I figured.
I will be there.
I'll be there, and I'm excited to first spring game under James Franklin. I hope the weather's great. Excited to see what's hopefully a great crowd, and I'm sure it will be a very very lively couple days in Blacksburg for the Boundary Corner crew.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
I'll be there with bells on. I got to talk Tally into getting up there with me, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to get there, man. I don't know. I'm about 50-50 on if I'm gonna be able to make it, but
Curtis keeps getting talked into assistant coaching.
Yeah, we're gonna have to work on Curtis, man. He's doing too much for that baseball team right now.
Man, I just hope the weather's better than last year. That was some of the worst spring game weather that we've had, and without rain. Like normally, like rain can be a factor, obviously. But that was some of the worst spring game weather we've had. Where rain.
Don't ever talk to me about Blacksburg and rain in your.
No. After the Purdue game in 2020.
After that Purdue game, man, I thought we was gonna die. I legit thought that was the last day I was gonna be on Earth for about an hour. Because I remember us sitting up in the stands and we were like, "Man, this ain't. Maybe it's just gonna pass us over." And then I was like, "Nah, this ain't passing over." And Curtis was like, "We probably need to
get out of
this
here.
thing." And then somebody's like, "Hey, it's a tornado over there," and I'm like,
Curtis had some intuition, like, y'all, we need to like get over here.
I came all the way to Blacksburg, Virginia to die. That's what was in my mind. And then we waited like 10 hours, and we had the best seats I've ever sit in Lane Stadium.
Ever. Well, listen, David, almost 2 hours in, we knew it was going to be this way. Anytime you join us, you're so much fun to talk with, man. I hope these boys, because in all likelihood, I'm not making it. And if I'm making it, I'm coming in sideways, and I probably got a kid on my side, so I can't go too crazy. But hopefully y'all can catch up with them. Everybody go follow David, The Real D Cunningham, out on Twitter. Yes, it's still Twitter. Go to Tech Sideline. Watch him on their pod. Watch his writings. He's an awesome individual when it comes to just Virginia Tech in general. So we appreciate you taking your time with us tonight, man.
I appreciate it. This is awesome. I always enjoy it. Sorry I couldn't do it last week because I was traveling for basketball, but I appreciate you fitting me in. And man, anytime I talk with you guys, it's always a blast. And 2 hours, man, it went by quick. But guess what, man? There's a lot to talk about. And
well, David, when you spend an hour and 30 minutes talking about how much you love basketball, that's what happens.
What it is.
It was like 45 minutes.
It was an hour. It was an hour on basketball.
We did talk 15 minutes to open on other stuff, though.
Dude,
you guys are asking the questions, man.
I was going to say, it was a good talk about basketball. I needed some of that, man, because I was coming from a negative place.
Both you and Curtis got your rants off, so I hope you guys feel much better after.
I do feel better after talking to you. Andretti, we see you, man. Andretti said he's going to the spring game, Brian. So if I'm not there, you find Andretti.
You gotta find
Andretti. You see me, you come holler at me, man. We're gonna be on Chicken Hill before the game. We're gonna have a little live stream on Chicken Hill before the game kicks off too. So
that's where it's gonna be.
We'll Andretti, since it's gonna be your first time, try to message us. Try to message Brian or Tally or myself on Twitter, the Boundary Corner. So we can get you where Chicken Hill is and where folks are going, man. But with that being said, this wraps up this episode of the Boundary Corner podcast, brought to you by Moments on the Moor with our very special guest, managing editor of Tech Sideline, David Cunningham. I am Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler.
Jonathan Talley.
As always, visit our website, boundarycornerbt.com, to listen to all of our episodes. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Subscribe to the YouTube or your favorite podcast source. We're on them all. As always, we are played in and out by our buddy down in Roanoke, Jason Long. Check out his website, jasonlongmusic.com. Also, check out, he is going to be doing some live shows on the weekend of April 10th at Pollard 107 South and at Crooked Shoreline on the 11th. Go check him out doing some acoustic sets down there. We appreciate y'all for listening. We appreciate y'all in the chat. Phil, have another beer. And let's go.
Okay.